everyone. Sorry, I was watching Bridgerton. Just need to see the end of it. If anybody ever watches it, it was a good one. I'm gonna talk about puppy socialization, or just talk about it. A lot of people think socializing your dog is just throwing them in there with other dogs. We'll talk about like what you think as far as perspectives go and what we come up together with what is actually the best possible scenario for socializing your dog. If anybody wants to leave any comments, for some reason on the dashboard, I can't see it. But if you go on to Messenger, you can message me on there for the camp. If you go to event, go to Messenger and you can put that in there. I think at least I can see it on my phone. If anybody wants to join me as a co-host, go on there. I don't mind. Actually, it works better for me to talk back and forth to somebody than to just, I don't know if anybody's on here. The dashboard doesn't seem to work like it should. So I think they said to try it on your phone, but for doing an event, it doesn't say you can do it on your phone that I could see. It just says you have to do it on the computer. So if anything, go on Messenger. Let me know. I'll at least have that on my phone to see what people are saying. Other than that, what do we all think as far as like if you go to a social event? What is the best environment for you to socialize with anybody? Do you think like having everybody around the same age? I don't know if you would want to socialize or go to a function where there's 5-year-olds and all different age groups. Is that a good socialization foundation? Also, what do you like? Who are the people that you're socializing with? Do you have the same do you guys do activities there? Do you have the same enrichment options? What is the purpose to go to this socializing event? And then also, you want to have a positive reaction or a positive experience. Because if there's bullies or the people might be different ages or they don't like the same thing that you do, are you going to have a good interaction with society in general? Are you going to feel safe? I mean, that is how we really need to feel. Let's feel safe in order to have a positive experience anyway. And then how long should you go? Like, is 8 hours way too much? How about you really just want to have, especially if it's your first time, you don't want to go there for 8 hours. You might want to go there for a couple hours and see how things go. But, like, these are all different perspectives that I want to talk about. Because socializing your dog isn't just throwing them in the group and seeing how they do with other dogs. Because, kids don't like that either. I mean, at school, a lot of kids don't like going to school for all these exact reasons. You get bullying. You got people that aren't into whatever it is that you're into. And that's why we all kind of form groups. So what about socializing for dogs? Should we think the same way? Is that something that is, consideration? I believe it would. These guys are toddlers in respect, and if they don't have a good time wherever they're socializing, that's not going to be a positive experience, and therefore there goes socialization. So we need to think of socialization is not just putting them with any dog. They have to be in the right group and with the right dogs. So keep that in mind when you're thinking of when we're talking about socialization with dogs. Daycares are the biggest part right now for socialization, other than it would be dog parks, and we'll go over them and see what we can come up with. I find we'll go over it. I don't love dog parks really that much, and we'll go over why. So what's so important about socialization? We're finding out dogs aren't as social as we thought that they were. We thought, oh, they go in packs and stuff. A pack is really one other dog, maybe two. Out of all my years of having dogs, I have only had one pack ever out of the 12 dogs I've ever had. Emmett and Shiloh, they are a pack. They are together. They're like those two best friends that talk, and they kind of leave you out. And what worries me is Emmett's 18, and he's got fluid in his chest, and Shiloh and him are so together that we're going to have to figure out what's going to happen, after Emmett goes, because his time's coming up. He's emotionally definitely going to have some issues, and I'll have to tell you how this all dynamic works. But a lot of dogs, they're your best friends. You are a pack. Doesn't mean the other dogs that they go in, to daycare and stuff, they're not what we think is socialization is packs. We want to socialize our dogs so that way they know how to go, into different events or functions and handle themselves appropriately and not lunge at everybody and have, any reactivity. That's what I think most people are thinking when we say socialize. But in actuality, when we go to school, we are socializing. That is how we start that. And in kindergarten, right? And that's where we kind of, preschool, when we first meet, other kids and stuff like that. And they're our own age. So, again, age is a factor. We want to, when we put them into social groups, we want to make sure they're around the same age. The other thing is that energy. We want to make sure they're the same energy. I try to match more energies than I do with sizes, I have found. Because there's a lot of big dogs that get along with little dogs, and as long as they have the same energy and they are best friends, I find that works really, really well. So, but age is definitely very important. If you go to a daycare and they have all ranges and they pretty much are separated from the big dogs to the little dogs, like a 5-year-old dog is roughly in the 30s or 40s. Do they want to play with a 2-month-old? Not necessarily all of them. Some once in a while, yeah, they're very motherly and they get along. And I watch a couple and call him Grandpa, but he loves the puppies. But it's his energy. I also know he's getting older and his shoulders hurts and stuff, so I have to watch out with that. But there are cases, but normally the majority, just like with us, I'm not going to really want to play with a toddler or 5-year-old for 8 hours. Maybe an hour or two, but it's not really something I would want to do in my daily life. So that would be something that you can definitely, to keep in mind. So age, big thing, especially in kindergarten. Activities. We do a lot of arts and crafts to get them, used to the environment. Also, you find what you're good at, a lot of kids. And also the teacher and stuff. When my daycare dogs are here, I give them different activities so that they can experience and also learn. Learning is the biggest thing we do at daycare here. So we want to make sure that that is also available, but it's mainly so that they can learn. And I mean, all of high school, you figure yourself out, right? I mean, high school is, we're glad we're out of high school. It's because we don't know each other, and we really don't know each other until we get into college. But that's where we'll talk a little bit more, but that's really what daycare is about. That's what socialization is about, is meeting kids your own age, having to figure stuff out, what you're good at, what you're not good at, or we're leaning on each other. And again, we don't think, for puppies, it's biting. For kids, we get into little squabbles, but we work it out together. And in not in high school, but like elementary school and junior high, just junior high, I got there was a lot of miscommunication, in high school, but we worked it out. That's what really socialization's about. It is, yeah, to have those little fights, but they work it out together. And that's important because that's what relationships are. You're going to have your fights, but you work it out. That is really what socialization's about. But for puppies, it's a big thing because biting's a huge thing. Like when you get a puppy and it bites you and you're like, ow, ow, it actually tells the puppy, yeah, you like it. They don't understand that you're trying to say no. They just see you getting reactive or excited in their eyes, and you're going, ah, and doing that squeaky voice. And that's what puppies do when they fight. So actually you saying no or stop or whatever is actually reinforcing it. That this is just so everybody knows. You actually don't want to say anything. You just want to get the heck out of there. So throw treats away and leave if that's what you need to do, because it's how your puppy's going to take that information. And if you make it scary and yell at them, they're just scared of you. They don't understand what it is that you're yelling at them for, because they think biting's normal. It's a normal behavior in dogs. For us, not so much. But I do have heard, toddlers do bite. And, we as they grow up, we teach them biting is, not exactly the best, but it takes a while. Puppies, they need to, the only way they know biting hurts is through each other. They have that communication. It's not all the communication is vocal. It's a lot of pheromones. There's a whole bunch of different communications that we can't do. And that's why biting and us, for puppies, we can't teach them not to bite. We can redirect it, but it's really like they need to know that it's painful and they can't do it through us. And so that's why big time the socialization for puppies is a big thing. But the biting, at least for us, but the socialization is more important for dogs. They need to bite and have those things happen, but they work it out. So that's the other thing, is that anybody who is potentially like at high school, they're the same kids. They're even in elementary school, they're the same kids. You don't get new kids coming in all the time. Because if you had new kids, can you build a relationship with just new? No, you can't. They come in and out so quickly. And we see that a lot, especially people that move a lot, like the kids that go from school to school every year or two. Their socialization is just, it's different. It has to do with whether or not they had a positive experience in school or whether they didn't. Obviously, I don't know, personality, I was a social butterfly, so I was kind of like everywhere, but I still had my main friends. But I didn't really have main friends until actually after college, and I lived in my environment with a lot. They were high school friends, but we still talk and we still stay together. I know my parents are very much like that too. All their high school friends, they are very much still together. Just keep that in mind, that if you go to daycare, I like daycare because hopefully those same dogs come the majority of the time. They're not just keep routinely coming and flowing in or whatever, or changing, because that's important. They need to be friends with somebody so that they can have those fights and they can react together and work things out. Because if it's always a new dog, again, that might not be a positive relationship, and then therefore one bad interaction with one dog and then more leads to not good socialization. And that's what is important here. That's why dog parks, they're different kinds of dogs. We'll get into that. There's also a couple other things, but that's a huge thing, is they should be the same dogs. And like here at my daycare, they're all the same dogs. They've been here for years. They all match them with their energy, but we also do learning. the majority, but we do a lot of rest. So that's the other thing is you, when I say time, how much time, if you're going to go to daycare and it's there for 8 hours, they need nap time, they need sleep time. Otherwise, that overstimulation of going, well, going crazy, that's not positive in my experience as a, anxiety trainer or a behavioralist. You need that downtime. Plus, if they're only interacting with dogs and they're crazy, that's what their experience is, and then they don't think that they can just have another dog in the room and just sleep and lay together and sniff together and just even have bowls on the other side while they eat together. Like, that's important, is the downtime. It's not the play. The play, maybe 5 to 10 minutes at a time, maybe 2 or 3 times a day tops, but it should be working together. And when I talk about working together, a lot of these daycares are doing this group training thing. Am I okay with that? I don't know. Again, it has to do with the dogs, first of all. Like, are they older? How would you feel being in high school and we got certain classes and I was good in biology, it was great biology, I always got A's, and what happens in these group classes? Same dynamic. One dog's really good at sit, other dog's not good at stuff. One dog, and I don't know if group training uses treats. I want to say they kind of don't, but I don't know. Here, yes, they do. They get treated, and we play a pattern game so they know who gets the treat. So they're not all going at it at once. They understand the pattern. So that's important too, because dogs do get a little bit of jealousy. Like, if one gets one and the other one doesn't, that's jealousy. But if one gets a piece of pizza and the other one gets bread, they actually don't know. They don't know that as well from the studies that we've shown. As long as one gets one and they both get something, then that's fine. I have seen those dogs that after one eats their meal, they go to the other one to see what they got. But I don't know, like, if it's to see if they got the same thing or if they just want to make sure that they both got something. I don't know. We still don't know about all that stuff. I'm sure it's coming in some other studies. But so can group training without treats? Maybe. But again, like, I hated gym. There's jocks, they did great. Not saying that they're bad or anything, that's not the thing. But socialization, yeah, you like that, but I'm over it. So, do we make dogs that aren't capable, especially in daycare? Daycare's so crazy and I'll control that. I don't know if they even can focus to do a lot of the group training, and most of them are probably older dogs, which, again, do you put a younger dog with an older dog? The older dogs I've seen get frustrated, especially when I got somebody new. I got to train it outside of the group first and then get them to know the games and then bring them in. Once they're really good with the game, I bring it in with the rest of them. And then that's a cool dynamic there. And that's where I think socialization to the next level goes that daycares don't do. And I think that would be a better time for all dogs to kind of do it like how I do, is they do enrichment, but the dogs figure out what they're good at. And then I make games where one has to do what they're good at, and then the other one goes to the next one to complete it, to do what they're good at. And then at the end, they work together to get to the end, and they get the treats. They figure out, and this is where I find guarding, because it's not guarding. It's each dog is good at something, and when one isn't, they go to the safest thing, and then they fight over and they protect what they're good at. It's not resources. It has to do with learning. But anyway, that's a whole other show. But daycare is about what people are good at, especially in high school and stuff. You find what you're good at, and then you go on into college, and then you work with people of the same interests, and then you guys work together, and we all work together as a community to get better, to have a better community. That's what a lot of these dogs are trying to do, and that's what I think daycare should be more about. But a lot of daycares are not. It's just, you let them go, and they're just all over the place, and they either have a good time or a bad time. And again, that's where socialization. If they have a bad time, guess what? They probably don't like other dogs that much. They have a good time, they're probably social butterflies, they're okay. but that's not the majority of them, and they're pretty, scarce. But again, do daycares have that environment where they can thrive and work things out and stuff? And that's socialization, right? That's what we do for ourselves. That's just like I say, we figure out what we're good at, and then we go on to college and then our community. That's why we have school. That is socialization. That is putting it all together. For dogs, are we doing that? Are we just saying that they're just getting dropped off for babysitting type of deal? And that's kind of, I feel some people do for school. I love you teachers. You guys do a great job. But I feel your pain a lot of times with a lot of the dogs. But like we have a small group, but my daycare is a school. It's not like that. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about socialization. So I hope everybody kind of understands where I'm coming from. If anybody has any questions, just DM me, whatever. We can go over that. So, see where it goes. But I hope everybody understands the whole socialization. Now, that being said, if you do go, and what you're looking for to see if your dog is having a positive reaction to daycare, first of all, when they come home, do they just, like, if they go home and just go to bed and sleep for that night, that's somewhat normal. As long as they're relaxed and they don't seem stressed out and they just kind of sleep for it. If they're sleeping for 2 or 3 days after daycare, that tells me he was very stressed out. And maybe we should think about that. And especially when it comes to dogs with anxiety, issues, like sound and stuff. Daycare, there's a lot of sounds in there. I could see how that could be a big problem. So we need to, when it comes to like behavioral management and stuff like that, if they're in daycare, I gotta figure out what's going on there. Does the dog really need to be in daycare? Because if they're not socializing and they're having a bad time, don't keep going there. It's not going to make it better. You don't eventually socialize. I mean, I see this with my friends' kids. They don't eventually. It doesn't change for a lot of them. So I find most of us find it a lot better in college than we do in high school. So, but keep that in mind. The other thing is do they come home and they're actually overstimulated and they're crazier when they come home? That's another bad thing. Say, no, don't do that. That tells me it's almost like an ADHD kid and you throw them into a mosh pit and they're going crazy and then they come home and they're like, they're overstimulated. That means they don't need daycare either. Don't do that, because that's actually just practice makes perfect. And if they're really good at being crazy and then you keep practicing crazy just keeps going. And so they need the opposite environment. They do not need to go into the mosh pit. They actually need a relaxation daycare, which they don't make yet. And that's kind of what I do here. We relax the majority of the time, because that is really what dogs need. They need to learn how to relax and be together. And instead of being crazy, they just need to okay, let's nap together. Let's all nap together. Let's work together. That is what they need, not crazy and biting and like puppies. You had to figure out how to bite and that it hurts. But then after a certain point, like around 8 months, biting should start dissipating. But that's why they need to learn how to socialize with dogs without biting or playing. They need to learn how to work together. So those are 2 things. Sleep for 3 days or 2 days, probably shouldn't be in daycare. Overstimulated when you come home, shouldn't be in daycare. So those are some 2 things that we need to think about when it comes to the aftermath of being a social dog. And if your dog's not social, that's okay. There's not an issue with that. That is actually somewhat normal. It is normal, actually, for the most part. We've been finding out. So places, anybody wants to join in with places? Again, I can't see any comments or anything on here, so if anybody wants to, I put on Messenger if you want to go on there. Socialization of dogs, you can go on there and let me know. But daycare is the biggest one, everyone. So you want to make sure if you go to daycare, make sure that the place has two or at least 2, if not 3 places where they can separate dogs. I know they have large dogs and little dogs, but I mean, I do energy more, but they also need a place where the dog doesn't want to socialize. They need a third place to just for beds and stuff, just for them to relax. Like, I think all daycare should have like a big place where couches and a movie theater. Just leave the door open, a dog can go in there if they want, but just it's strictly, and that's what I do in my living room. There's no play in my living room. It's associated with Zen. If they try to play, let's get out. You go in the kitchen, you go outside. Those are your play areas. But luckily, we do so much enrichment that they're used to it. They understand the schedule, and they go to bed. So they really need to have those Zen. I mean, I can't say that more. Zen places. Sleep. That's important, even for daycare. So see if they got beds. A lot of them most of them got crates. Unfortunately, a lot of dogs that I take care of and train, they shouldn't be in a crate. It's not usually good for them unless they're crate chained and they're really comfortable, but I always have them have their blankets. Their blankets from home makes them more secure, and it's a better dog. And most daycares will not, because other dogs will pee in other dogs' beds and stuff like that. I get it. It's a lot of issues with people. And the other thing I'm noticing, especially because of the barking and stuff like that, we have to watch out. As a anxiety trainer, I have to say, hey, do you guys got bark collars? Because that null and voids all the training. That has a lot to do with sound anxiety, because it's right by their ear. There's low ultrasound frequencies that we can't hear, but they hear it, and it's right next to their ear, and that is why those collars work, is because it's like nails on a chalkboard. How would you like to hear it? Bark. Yeah, you can't positively associate these nails on a chalkboard that I can even come up with. If somebody gave me $100 every time I heard that, I don't know. Could I have that positive reaction? Say, hey, oh yeah, no, I don't know. Again, this is always why I love to see what people have to think, because that's what I've heard. A lot of people are using the collar beeps are for positive, but actually it's not. So, and I'm trying to do a video all on this to inform people how they feel. But perspective again. $100, yeah, okay, but that if it was like $1, he gave me $1, which is a treat for a dog, maybe 5. I don't know. I still wouldn't want to hear it. I would probably run away and get the heck out of there. It would be worth it for $1, but again, so beds. Make sure they don't have the bark collars. And some of those group training, I don't know if they use those e-collars for training either. You got to watch out. You got to ask. So make sure you ask. And then, do they offer enrichment other than the balls and the thing, like sniffing games, stuff like that? A lot of them don't, because treats and stuff are not what they really use, because dogs get sick. Some dogs are allergic. I understand. I got my own daycare, so. And it can be costly when I make them their own food and stuff like that. But that's just what I do. I'm a vet tech too, so I understand dietary restrictions and stuff like that. So, but enrichment, treats, is that a thing? How many dogs are there? I do small groups. I got no more than 8. Just because, and even then it's usually 4 or 5 per small daycare group or something. And also, how long are they there? Some of the dogs 4 hours, and that's fine. That's more than enough time. I mean, when we go out, even to go out to a bar or something, you're only there for a couple hours. If you are there for a long period of time, it's probably in your behavior, and it's because you're calm and comfortable. I hope you're not going there and winding it all up and then, getting kicked out of bars and stuff like that. But that's, again, perspective. How long do they need to be there? Again, in school, if we were in elementary school, we were there for 8-something hours. That's why we're learning. It keeps us busy. Otherwise, if we just let it go to gym all day, that'd be bad. I would never want to go to school if it was gym like that all day. They have to find it enriching, really. So, again, keep those in mind with your dog. A lot of these dogs should not be there for a full day. I get it if you have to, especially with separation anxiety dogs. That is our go-to, and somebody has to be. But that's because they're much happier and they're safer with somebody being there, and they'll be okay with other dogs. Some of them, but some of them don't. When we gotta look for somebody, again, find resources or people that can either go to your house and stay, college kids, or go to a family friend, whatever. But time. How much time should they be there? So if you're noticing your dog is just way overactive and stuff when they come home, try half a day. Don't do a full day. See if that will help. And then make sure the people are qualified. I know I do everything myself. I have hired Christine Nicholas. She worked here, and a couple other volunteers to help me with doggy daycare like 3 years ago, because there were so many. I needed somebody to help. She was a vet tech. She learned a lot of stuff with me when we were doing, a lot of stuff with enrichment. But you want to make sure that she was over 30. I mean, Christy, if you're listening, she's over 30 years as a retired vet tech. I knew she was qualified. It just behavior is totally different than vet tech. Medical and behavior, totally different. So it's still new. Even if you have been in the field, I was in the field 20 years, and this was all new to me. So behavior is, again, guessing. So we're just kind of guessing how the dog feels. I'm a little bit better now about it because I kind of am been, 5 years doing studies and stuff like that, and got a lot of data and stuff, and I got a lot of stuff going in my brain that I can kind of guess before they do it because I know what they're going to do. But it's you want to make sure they're qualified people. High school kids, I find, sometimes they're better at observing than the older ones. So a lot of these daycares do not have trainers or anybody qualified even with any kind of dog experience other than they have one. So just be cautious and make sure that they have an emergency plan, and make sure they have insurance, and see what my dogs are covered, under insurance and stuff like that. Just as I am. So make sure they're qualified. Make sure that they got safety things. Make sure they're honest. If the person says, "Hey, how did they do today?" and they say, "Oh, they did fine." First of all, fine means bad. They had a bad time, but I'm not going to tell you. I even know this. Fine is not fine. I always try and be honest and say, look, they had a tough day. I want to make sure this dog is okay and feels okay and has a good experience, or tries to. Most of these dogs that come here they come here because of their anxiety. So I already know what I'm up against. So trying to positively reinforce them or put them on medications and help them, it works. I got plenty of clients that come here that it happened, and they've been here for over 5 years, and I'm seeing them as they grow older and how their behavior is changing, especially towards newer dogs, and how to make that sort of socialization with other dogs still positive, because I need that. But I learn and see how that grows. Even now, it's never going to stop. But you want to make sure you get honesty. Not just doing it for the money. Oh, they did fine because they want your money. I want to say, hey, how can we help this dog? Yeah, half day, it'll be less. That's looking out for the dog right there. It's not money. It's making sure that socialization is really going in a positive way. So look for honesty, especially when it comes to asking about bar collars and stuff like that. Ask the attendants or something like that, just to make sure. And also about crate use and stuff like that. You want a place that's going to be honest with you. And I can't tell that enough because I hear it all the time. So I understand it's a business and stuff like that. I guess I'm just, being a tech, I always look out for the animals' best interest. We advocate for them. So I'm always looking for safety. And then also make sure the place is somewhat, clean. They got toys or something there for them to do. It's not just an empty space, which that's what I find is most empty spaces, and then they got some beds or something on the sides, which some dogs are okay if it's a big space, but I mean, mine's in my house, but I do a lot of stuff for them. They got beds everywhere, and the cuddle beds, they love them more than my couch, which is great, but you want to make sure they have something to do, clean. It's expected for a lot of dogs, especially, I mean, puppies are expected, but urination, defecation, yeah. I have people bring their animals, at least a blanket from home, and we do blanket training and stuff like that, but I tell them, I'm like, their dog peed on it, he's new, and I try to catch it, because that is a sign of anxiety. Whether marking, it's still, the marking is fear of, it's a fear. That's why they do it. Fear of losing their space, so usually if the dog's peeing, that usually means, okay, we need to talk to some behavioralist about this, because it's normal, but like there's an extent to why they're doing it, especially if it's turning into a pattern. So just talk to, get some honesty out of the people, and if you smell stuff on, bedding or on them, I've seen dogs pee on other dogs. I always tell my client, I actually caught it on tape once and put it on, I think, Facebook, and one of my clients said, "There's my dog peeing on another dog," and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes it is, and it was funny, but there's a line. So yes, it's normal, but sometimes if there's a pattern with it, it can be a anxiety behavioral thing. So that's kind of like daycare in a nutshell. The daycares are the biggest ones. I think they're the best, but I think there's much needed improvement, especially for now dogs, post-COVID. They all have anxiety now. We have done this to them, and it's not going to go back. So this is the new norm going forward. So we need to adapt. Other things, dog parks. Again, not the same dogs. Also, a lot of these dogs are on leashes. Some of them are off leash, but then they're not all dog parks have a small dog or a medium dog, but that doesn't matter, especially if they're older dogs and you got little dogs going up to them. There's fights there all the time. I mean, and they leave pheromones after a fight, and they're there for a week or so. Because I've had some clients say, yeah, I went to the dog park, and my dog was acting weird and wouldn't go in this one area, and then somebody said, yeah, there was a dog fight there like 3 days ago. Bingo, those pheromones stay around for a while. So a lot of dogs can act differently just due to fighting like a week ago in that area. So again, you don't know what happens there. So you got to be cautious. There's a lot of them aren't leashed, but most of the time, off leash is how they socialize. On a leash, that usually causes complications. And again, I'll get in that in a minute, but dog parks, just be careful. And also, I wouldn't necessarily love that as a social thing unless you guys have like a puppy group or something that meets there. And again, I was thinking of trying to come up with that maybe being a possible research that we can put together and figure out if we can do, because I like figuring stuff like that out, but which we'll get to that. But dog parks, just watch out. It's not the best. When I worked in emergency, most of the dog fights came from the dog park, and it was never good. So be cautious, but don't use that specifically for socialization. It's usually banned socialization, so cautious. Other ones, events, store, going to Lowe's, stuff like that. That's good for socializing. I feel more for people and being around people, but other dogs, because they're on leash, they feel confined, and there's a lot of not good socialization there. So you got to watch out with going to Lowe's and events and stuff like that. Cautious. Again, leashes have more of a negative reaction than a positive. Having a friend. I find this is great, and that's probably why a lot of them come here. When I had a puppy, Archie was young, and I started daycare. He did great with socialization. But everybody knew me at the animal hospital, so a lot of the animal hospital people came here, and they did great together growing up. So if you have a friend, like a puppy around the same age or younger, you want them under 2, that's when they do most of their socialization, just like us. Again, we go in when we're 5, we kind of get out when we're 17 or 18. That's up to a dog that's up to 2 years old for the majority of dogs. So think about it that way. So you do most of your socialization before 2 years of age. So I find friends, if they like the dogs, perfect, because then you're going to see your friends more often. They're going to see the dog. They usually work it out, and it's in a very small group. Works perfect. I love it. So I kudos for them if you got a friend. And then the other one is a big one, Petco, with the training and stuff like that, with training with social groups. They're on a leash though. They do have little puppy plays and stuff like that, but it's not. And they are the same one, but it's only like what 4 or 6 weeks. Uh, and I think if you do the training, it's more for the socialization, less for the training. The training there is alert based, and they have to because they got to grab those puppies' attention because there's friends, so that's going to be hard, especially if the dog's really not. One dog's in training, the other one isn't. Again, that's where the enrichment and figuring out what they're good at. But you got to also be careful. They got to be fully vaccinated. You shouldn't take an 8-week-old puppy into that. They're not vaccinated. Parvos are big puppy killer people, big ones. And then, we got other zoonotic, like lepto and stuff like that are still around. So cautious with those, but again, if I've noticed more and more of those are having those play dates before and after, which I think is good. But don't expect a lot of really good training unless you're putting in the work. You got to put in that work at home, not there. So they kind of teach you the lure, but that you got to really do it at home. And then other things, those are the big ones that I find socialization. If anybody's got any other ones, by all means, you can go on Messenger, let me know. We can talk about it, but I was thinking they do have Sniff Spot out there. It is just for your dogs. You rent out somebody's yard for dogs, but I'm like, I do have Sniff Spot here in my backyard in the summer usually at certain times, and I'm like, I wonder if there's a way we could do just the same puppy people at like Sunday at such a time, and those people, and maybe we can get positive socialization, and then they're only there for an hour or two. That's all you really need. You don't need a full 2 or 4 hours or anything like that. Just a small amount of time for like an hour. I think that would be good, but we got to make sure that, again, I would probably have to pre-screen them and make sure energies and stuff like that match so that they have a positive time. But these are just some things to think about. I love interaction, because if I got some interaction here, which I'm not seeing anything, let me know. I can always set up a chat group and we can get a bunch of people and then talk about setting something up. I'm always, as a behavioralist and actively studying about behavior, I try to look at all this as an opportunity to learn. I'm trying to make everybody's lives better, well, easier, but I'm trying to figure out how to help instead of cause chaos. So if there's anything that anybody has any ideas, float them my way. I'm willing to help or use my yard or figure out different things for learning, and then also helping other puppies and finding a better way to do things. Science is always about learning and trying to make things better. It's not staying the same. Staying the same doesn't work. Life is always about growth and changing and evolution. And unfortunately, we have to do the same thing. And we're seeing this with our puppies, especially when it's coming. They're getting more anxiety, and it has to do with evolution, and us treating them more like people. They're creating more anxiety because of that. There's research showing that. So we got to grow with that. We got to change and help them. And I know my parents are like, my dog 20 years ago didn't. I get that. I actually looked into it. That's why I looked into it and said, why are these dogs 20 years ago different? Their brains are changing, and it has to do with us. And COVID was a big one because we brought them in. We had more time. We treated them like children, and therefore we are kind of our fault. But we got to also support them, so we can't go back, we can only go forward. So any ideas or anything, let's go. Let's have them. Let's try and change things, make it better. I'm open to ears, but again, I'm Camp Chloe. That tech specializes in separation anxiety and behaviors. Just let me know I can help, and how maybe if anybody's got ideas, let's try it out. Let's see how we can make things better. So I hope that kind of helps with some socialization and some preferred ways of doing it, but what it's actually for, but also the perspective of how to make that better, how we feel we would be in certain situations, and because we want them to have a positive experience. Because if they don't, You got anti-socialization, and that's what I'm seeing a ton of. And is daycare the culprit? I know the dog parks are, dog attacks and stuff. I'm finding daycare might be causing some of these as well, especially now you got disease collars going in. It is not a good thing. So we want to make sure that we are all honest and make sure that we definitely know what's going on with our pets, but we also want them to thrive and be really healthy minded dogs. So I hope this all helps. And if anybody's got any questions, you can message me on Messenger and go from there. But everybody have a good night, and we'll see you at the next Camp Chloe Facebook Live. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.